Good evening. I'd like to call to order the May 23rd, 2024 regular meeting of the Naperville Park District Board of Commissioners. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Monica, can we have the roll call, please?
President Gibson?
Here.
Vice President Ruffing?
Here.
Commissioner Ansier?
Here.
Commissioner Jacks?
Here.
Commissioner Janner?
Here.
Commissioner Risvold?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here. Awesome. Thank you, Monica. Do we have any matters from the public?
We do not.
Okay. We will move on to the consent agenda.
Item 3.1, approved May 9th, 2024 regular meeting minutes. Item 3.2, move to find that the need to complete the emergency installation of a temporary pump for the Naper Brook Golf Course irrigation recharge well is not adaptable to competitive bidding, and to ratify and approve a nunc-pro-tunc the action of the executive director in approving the contract to complete emergency installation of a temporary pump with Water Well Solutions Illinois LLC in the amount of $53,500. 3.3, approve resolution 24-02, name the synthetic turf field at Knock Park Wintrust Athletic Field. 3.4, approve ordinance 1057, authorizing the sponsorship agreement between Wintrust Financial Corporation / Naperville Bank and Trust and the Naperville Park District. That is all.
Thank you. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately? All right, hearing none.
Move to accept consent agenda items 3.1 through 3.4.
Second. Roll call, please.
Vice President Ruffing?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Ansier?
Yes.
Commissioner Jacks?
Yes.
Commissioner Janner?
Yes.
Commissioner Risvold?
Yes.
President Gibson?
Yes.
Move to approve consent agenda items 3.1 through 3.4.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. No unfinished business. We'll move on to new business. First is refunding 2015 general obligation park bonds.
Thank you, President Gibson. As you recall, of the past couple years, actually, we've been talking about the ability for the district to refund our 2015 bonds. Anthony Maselli, you all know Anthony from Spear Financial, is going to be giving us a presentation on the bonds, and we would be looking for, this is just a presentation this evening, the bond ordinance or the parameters ordinance, if the board wishes, would be approved at the first meeting in June 13th. This same presentation was given to the Finance Committee on April 30th, and Anthony, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sue. Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you. I will get us started just to set the table a little bit, and this is the same packet that I just handed out. But so before we get into the 2015 refunding, just to give a quick overview, there are, as an Illinois Park District, there are 4 types of borrowings that you can enter into. So when we look at this page, this gives just a quick summary of those. The left side of the page are property tax supported borrowings. So there are general obligation park bonds, which you can enter into through referendum, and non-referendum general obligation park bonds are limited tax bonds. These are the bonds that we'll be talking about today with regards to the 2015 bonds. So you can enter into these without referendum, but they are subject to certain limits. One of those limits is your non-referendum debt limit, so how much you can have outstanding at once. And then the second limit is your debt service extension base, and that is the levy that you can extend to pay all of your limited tax bonds. That debt service extension base, also referred to as a DSEB, grows by the lesser of the annual CPI adjustment or 5%. So the last few years we've had some fortunate 5% growths. Fortunate for your DSEB, maybe not as fortunate for inflation in the wider market and interest rates, but the give and take in both of those. The right side of the page are non-property tax supported, so this would just come out of general revenues of the district, and they're not subject to any referendum, any direct referendum, but other borrowing options that the district has. Currently, the only issue you have that would be on the right side of that page is one issue of debt certificates that matures actually in just a few years. But other than that, all of your debt would be on the lower left, which is your non-referendum limited tax bonds. So if we look at the debt capacity and debt service extension base, the statutory debt limit, so all of your debt, aside from debt certificates and alternate revenue source bonds, so just the voted, which you don't have any, and limited tax bonds, count against your statutory debt limit, which is 2.875% of your EAV. Currently, that debt limit is $260 million. So it's a very large number based on the size of your, the value of your tax base. Your non-referendum debt limit is a smaller number, and that what goes against those is just those limited tax bonds. That's how much you can have outstanding at once. Based on your 2023 EAV, current non-referendum debt limit is just over $52 million. And if you net out all of the debt that counts against that, you have about $21.5 million of available debt limit. So those are $21.5 million that you could issue or have outstanding right now in addition to what you already have for limited tax general obligation bonds. Again, there's a second limit on limited tax general obligation bonds, which is how much you can levy each year to pay for those bonds, and that's your debt service extension base or your DSEB. So the table in the bottom right shows what your DSEB started at, its base, which was $2,159,000 and some change there, and what that's grown to beginning in 2009 with the CPI adjustments. So with the 2024 levy, your debt service extension base is $3,055,315.10. So that's the 2024 levy, which will be collected next year, 2025. So page 4 shows of the limited tax bonds that you have outstanding, how much available debt service extension base you have going forward. So this is your additional levying capacity when you take off all of your current limited tax general obligation bonds. So you'll see you have currently 4 series outstanding of limited tax general obligation bonds. Looking at starting with the 23 levy, so that's the levy you're collecting this year, 2024, you have a debt service extension base of just over $2.95 million. You have debt service that goes against that base of $2,754,000. So you had about a $200,000 debt service extension base margin. So that's capacity that essentially went unutilized. You did not levy that amount. Going forward with the current debt service, you'll see that, again, the 2024 levy increases to just over, or not, the debt service extension base rather increases to $3,055,000. And then we, for this table, assumed a reasonable amount of growth in that debt service extension base going forward. So we assume 2.3% for the levy in 25, and then a flat 1.5% every year thereafter. And what you'll see is in the far right, going forward, that is your debt levying capacity under your current debt service. So you have $314,000 next year, $373,000 after that, and then it continues to increase as your current debt service matures. Page 5 is just a chart representation of what we just looked at for the numbers. So you'll see the colored bars represent the debt service levies on each of the existing limited tax bonds. The blue line is your limit. It's your debt service extension base, and the difference between the bars and the line there is your levying capacity for the future. So what you could issue and use in the future to support additional limited tax bonds. So looking at the 2015 bonds, these were issued at the end of 2015 in a par amount of $9,385,000. There is currently $6,755,000 outstanding on the bonds, and that matures 2027 through 2035. The interest rates on all of those maturities are 4%. Those bonds can be called at any time. The call provision was December 30th of 2023. So we are beyond that, so they can be called on any date at this point. And called means we can refinance them, call them in like you would your home mortgage, and reissue new bonds to replace those. So we have this opportunity now to refinance those bonds, reduce the interest rate, and think about utilizing some of that debt service extension-based capacity over the next few years, if desired. So we'll talk about that with a few scenarios coming up here. So we ran two scenarios for discussion. So this first scenario is a refinancing of the 2015 bonds and a slight shortening of the average life in order to utilize the available debt service extension-based capacity in the next two levy years. So looking at this chart on page 7, you'll see that the first set of columns after the years represents the new bonds, the new debt service. So you'd have principal on the new bonds, 2024 bonds, which would replace your 2015 bonds, the interest on those bonds, and then the total debt service payments. The existing LTGO debt service is existing limited tax general obligation debt service. That's your debt service on the limited tax bonds that we aren't refunding. So everything except the 2015s. Total limited tax bonds debt service would be the new debt service that we'd have to support with that debt service extension base. And then you can see the savings, which would be the debt service savings from the refinancing. And under this model, what we've done is we've used, in the 2024 levy, we targeted half of the available debt service extension base margin. So of the roughly $300,000 in available DSEV margin that you have next year, we used $160,000 of it. And then in the following year, we used the entire debt service extension base margin of about $370,000. What that does is in the subsequent years, 2027 through 2035, it frees up about $110,000 of available debt service extension base thereafter, or your debt service savings. So we're shortening the average life using a little bit of that debt service extension base capacity and saving about $480,000 in debt service cost, 2015 bonds versus the 2024 bonds. We ran a second scenario, which, similar to the first, we're shortening the average life and using that available debt service extension base. The difference with scenario 2 is we're using the entire available debt service extension base levy for levy year 24 collected in 25. So rather than target $160,000 of that available capacity, we're targeting the full roughly $10,000 of that capacity. So we're going right up to the debt service extension base margin for the next 2 years, shortening the life of the bonds, and then creating roughly $140,000 a year in savings, then 2027 through 2035. So the thought behind both of these models is that at the moment the district doesn't have a need to use that capacity for the next 2 years, but there may be something down the road where creating this additional capacity could be beneficial. So rather than just do a uniform refunding and leave things status quo, we could use this available capacity to shorten the bonds slightly, pay them off more rapidly, and then create additional savings down the road that can be used, if needed, by additional bonds down the road. I think I'm on timing, but we could probably pause, and Sue, if you wanted to add anything, or if there's any questions, we can talk, or I can go back through a few things.
Okay, first, does the board have any questions for Anthony yet?
Yeah, just two questions. The first is maybe obvious, but what's your recommendation? Obviously, you're doing this for a living. What's your recommendation? And then the second question, which is kind of related to the first, is obviously we care about our bond rating here at the Park District. So,
Absolutely.
When you talk about your recommendation, can you talk about possible impact on the bond rating? Are we increasing our risk, decreasing our risk? That's
Absolutely. Given the situation, my recommendation would be to utilize scenario 2. I think, as we discussed at the Finance Committee meeting, you as an Illinois Park District, there aren't many tools you have at your disposal to finance projects. Your debt service extension base and the ability to issue limited tax bonds is really your most important and available tool. By using that full capacity, it turns out, based on the size of your tax base, you're talking about $300,000. It's not a huge change to the debt service versus the size of the tax base, but it does create additional capacity for you down the road as a district. It also, just from an economic standpoint, shortens the average life of a loan, pays it off more rapidly, saves you additional money, even if you don't do anything to fill that additional levy down the road beyond 2026. From a rating standpoint, it would be nothing but a positive because we're not adding debt with this transaction. We're replacing higher interest rate debt with lower interest rate debt and paying it off sooner. So I don't see it as any risk, and in fact, I would see it as a rating positive for either of these scenarios, really.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, real quick. Higher CPI, you measured it out or averaged it out at 1.5%. If it's a higher CPI number, it's a larger margin, right?
Yeah.
So higher CPI, greater savings.
Not greater savings. The savings would stay the same.
Okay.
Greater capacity down the road, though.
I got you.
Yeah, because we're not, this CPI won't change the debt service, it changes your ability to levy.
Any other questions?
Oh, there's one thing that I would like to mention, and Anthony, you can chime in anytime.
Sure.
In the memo that we provided, we talked about the way we're structuring this, the way, which we haven't done in the past when we didn't do supplemental levies. We do not have to make a decision now to do a supplemental levy, but the mechanism in order to capture all the debt service going forward for these bonds as CPI grows over time is doing a supplemental levy. So if the board at the time we were making that decision did not want to do the supplemental levy, then we would be paying some of that debt service out of funds on hand as we've been currently doing. But when we set this model up and the way we looked at utilizing DSEB, the supplemental levy is a great tool to do that. And I'll just piggyback on what Anthony said about our funding sources. Is utilizing that DSEB to the fullest extent now that we know CPI is going down. I mean, it's been 5%, so we, as a board, you chose not to do a supplemental levy. We have done them in the past, and it's just when we've maxed our DSEB, it's put us in the position for where we are right now years ago, and that is utilizing this tool for taking care of what we have. The flexibility we've talked about, and then taking full advantage of opportunities that may come up mid-year, such as pickleball courts. I think we've done some turf fields that weren't in a plan, and we're able to do that because we're maximizing that funding source, which we don't have a lot to put away for capital going forward. Just wanted to mention that as we structured this and looked at it, we were going in with the assumption of, yep, we're going to be bringing that option forward to you depending on the growth, hopefully growth in CPI. Right,
and so to that point, if you think about the supplemental levy, right now, when we issue the bonds, your debt service extension base is that $3,055,000 number. So we're assuming 2.3% growth for the subsequent levy year, but we can't assume that the day we close. So we'll have a debt service number that'll assume some growth, but a levy that doesn't. When we know what the levy is for the following year, we then come back to the board and ask for that supplemental levy where we can true up to where the debt service is. Now let's say that CPI growth for the year was above the 2.3% we're assuming, and it was 3%. We don't get to take the full 3%. We can only take the debt service. So regardless of where CPI goes, if it's less than 2.3, we can't get all of the debt service, and then some of that has to come out of other funds of the district. And then if it's more than 2.3, we can only take to where we've bonded for in the debt service. You can't, the only way to access that levy is to issue the debt. So we would issue the debt assuming a 2.3 number, but it could be a little bit different. That difference, right now we're talking about the total debt service being $3,122,000. So, the difference between that and $3,055,000 would be the supplemental levy.
All right. Any other questions? And did the finance committee discuss the two scenarios and have a recommendation from the committee?
We agreed. We
Okay.
completely agree with scenario 2.
With scenario 2. Okay. Good. All right.
So is there consensus for bringing forward the parameters or the bond ordinance at the June 13th meeting? And actually, we could go through the schedule because we have our rating call scheduled with Moody's for next week.
Great.
You want to just go through it real
Yeah,
quick?
happy to do that. So,
Great.
as Sue had mentioned, we have our rating call with Moody's next week. That'll happen on Tuesday. We will receive the rating no later than the following week. We're expecting then to have the parameters ordinance brought to the board, the park board, June 13th. Finalize the official statement the following day, which would be June 14th, put that out into the market, and then take bids on a competitive bond sale the week of June 24th. We would then close the bonds the week of July 15th. And that's when we would put the money in escrow to refinance the 2015 bonds, and then the 2024 bonds would take over. But as far as locking in interest rates, we're expecting the week of June 24th when we have the competitive bond sale.
Okay. So you're looking for consensus to bring it to the next board meeting, correct?
Correct. That would be for approval.
Okay. Can I get just a verbal yes from everyone?
Last question, I'm sorry. What if any fees are associated with the refinancing?
Yep, there are typical bond issuance costs would be associated. I have a breakout of those that I can actually send Sue rather than, I don't have them in front of me, but I can get you those. The only cost we will not know until the day of sale is our underwriter discount, which is part of the bid during a competitive sale, but I have all of the other costs broken out, which would be municipal advisory fee, bond counsel fee, rating agency fee, paying agent fee. All of those are contingent upon the bond sale. So if this rates increase to a level between now and June 24th where we don't feel it's advantageous or we don't fit within the parameters set forth by the board, those fees wouldn't be paid. They'd be all contingent. But I can follow up with rather than
Wouldn't mind seeing that.
not at all.
Get the total
Have them put
picture.
together. So we'll get you an estimate, and then we'll as we tighten them up. keep
Yep, and I
showing
just
them.
thought of one thing to add when you see the parameters ordinance. If you recall, it's going to set the parameters of a total amount that we can issue and a top interest rate. I think we've at 5.5%. The other key thing in there is the approval for the sale. The way it's written in there, it's the board president, and either Brad or myself are the two that would sign off on the sale, and then the results will be reported to the board at the next meeting. And I will send you tomorrow in a weekly packet a draft of that parameters ordinance.
Okay. Thank you. Rich, are
So yes,
you in
support.
consensus? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. So yes, consensus from the board to move forward with that. Okay. Great.
Great.
Thank you
you
so
all.
much. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it. All right. Next up, we have the draft 3-year financial plan.
Thank you, President Gibson. We're going to get the slides switched over, and then we'll get started on this. This evening, Director Stanish and I are going to give an overview of the draft 3-year plan that was provided in the last weekly packet, and then be able to go through and answer any questions that the board may have regarding the plan. The intent is to talk through tonight in the draft form, and then we will bring the plan back to the June meeting for approval. This plan really serves as kind of a roadmap and a guide as we begin to put together the following year's annual budget. You got that? All right, so we'll begin this evening by just talking a little bit about, as we look at putting together the 3-year plan as well as our annual budgets, we look to maintain levels of excellence in multiple areas, including staffing. Wages and benefits represent the largest portion of the annual expenses within the district's budget at about 41% in 2024. We've been very creative, Sam and her team and Katie and her team, as well as all the different department directors, in finding creative ways to recruit and retain staff, especially over the last few years. And we have seen improvement in those areas, but we're still experiencing challenges also in those areas. We have some positions that are still difficult to fill. Something that we're seeing that's a bit concerning is within college programs, some of the majors that would affect Park District operations, such as like turf management. Some colleges are moving away from even offering those types of courses at their locations. So that's something that we have to be aware of and that we have to continue to build off of. We're seeing increased negotiations when it comes to whether it be part-time or in full-time positions, where when we're bringing applicants in, just a difference from a few years back, there's more negotiating, and it's negotiations on wages and salaries, not increased benefits, anything along those lines. We're also experiencing compression issues as we are bringing in newly hired staff at higher rates, running up against staff that have been with the district for a number of years. And one of the major initiatives that we're completing this year is an employee compensation study for full-time staff positions. And that's something that just kicked off, and we will have more information later this year on any types of recommendations for adjustments with compensation for full-time positions, and certainly there'll be more discussion on that. With our programs and events, continuing to offer very diverse, wide-ranging offerings, but also working to gather community feedback on the types of programs and interests that they have for our programs. Maintaining affordability when we're looking at this 3-year plan and the budget of our programs and the experiences that we provide to the community. All while being faced with some rising costs and expenses. Programs are becoming more costly to be able to operate. One example is like with our day camp programs that we offer during the summer, with additional costs associated with field trips, transportation costs, so on. And then in addition to that, just the wages aspect of it. So that is a challenge that we're continuing to work through, but we take into account when we're putting this plan together. And then continuing to offer really high quality experiences within those programs. We want our programs to be great experiences and not just something, again, the day camp example, to where we're providing simple daycare. We want the kids to have a great experience when they're there. Our parks and facilities, continuing to offer a wide range of experiences, also working to understand community needs and interests in those areas. And that's something that we're working on right now with this indoor recreation space needs assessment, the community input we're receiving, the community survey that's going to be conducted this summer that's going to provide us with a lot of feedback. Maintaining affordability at our facilities, those that charge fees, ensuring that we're not pricing out residents' ability to be able to come and utilize those different places. Continuing overall quality. Really, that extends to everything that we do, from our programs and services that we provide to the experiences that we provide to our employees as a major employer within the community. Certainly taking into account financial stability and maintaining the positive financial position of the district, and also creating a plan and budget that's sustainable, that we're going to be able to continue to operate from in the years to come. And then, importantly, maintaining public trust. We have received very high satisfaction ratings from the community in the last community survey, as well as the city's survey. And we want to make sure that we maintain that public trust, maintain that satisfaction. And this is another way, by putting together this 3-year financial plan, really putting that roadmap together of being transparent and letting the community know what we're looking to do and where we're positioned over the next few years. Each one of our 3-year plans, after they're approved by the board, does get added to our website for any resident to be able to access. So the 3-year financial plan's focus, again, I mentioned establishing that roadmap for the next few years. And based on, we have major initiatives that are in the district's master plan and our strategic plan. We talked about emphasizing and really attracting and maintaining that workforce that is so important to what we provide to the community and all that we do, from maintaining parks and facilities to providing the programs and services that we do. Continuing innovation across our district operations. We've done that in a number of areas through use of technology, through changes with some of our maintenance practices, the autonomous mowers that we continue to use, looking at the new technologies that are coming out in that area, and how can we apply that in other aspects of the district to help with some of those gaps where we have with some of the staffing. And then continue to work to meet the high expectations of our residents. We live in a great community with high expectations, as they should for our parks, programs, and facilities. We want to make sure that we are putting the plan together that's going to be able to support that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Director Stanish.
Thank you. So overall, just a high level. When we put the 3-year plan together, we're going to start talking about the funding sources. It is definitely not as intense as an annual budget is. Departments are not going line item by line item through everything, but focusing on major categories, areas where we know there's going to be challenges on the expense side, identifying commodities and fuel. We make assumptions on property tax for 25 and 26, which is our main funding source. So the purpose of the plan really is to look out for a couple years from the information that we know right now and the capital that we know right now, and to say, are we on the right path? Are we sustainable? Does it all make sense? Is it all going to fit and work together? So I'll just start by saying we're all happy that when we finished up, through 26, we are on the right path and we are sustainable, knowing what we know right now. So having said that, some of the major assumptions on the funding side is obviously property tax and charges for services are 2 main revenue sources that we talk about all the time. The 2025 property tax is based on a CPI cap of 3.4%. That is a known percent increase. It was the December CPI of last year. So that we know is our cap, and Anthony even talked a little bit about that, was built into the debt assumptions. When we make estimates for EAV and new construction, when you put all that together, we would have an average taxpayer increase of about $20 per household, or about $440 a year, and that was based on a $460 average home. We always have to give some magnitudes. That $20 could be 15, it could be 22, it's at 25. It's an estimate around our best information of what we know right now. Our special recreation levy, we're anticipating that increasing to 3.05. It was 2.74 this past year. We could go up to 4 cents for that levy. We only levy what we need here. And that increase that we are expecting is based on, first, the capital planned for 2025, but secondly, WESDRA's operating costs, like everyone else, to provide inclusion services has increased. Their personnel costs, their operating costs have gone up. So for us to continue to provide the inclusion services for all of our Naperville participants, our costs have been rising for that. So we've built in some assumptions that that is going to continue into 25 and into 26. As far as programs overall, we're projecting a 5% increase, and then for golf, 2%. And programs and Fort Hill. For example, Fort Hill, we're projecting growth. We're not projecting any increases yet in membership fees. And the same for programs. That's something when we get down to the annual budget and the program level and we start looking at Fort Hill, that would be evaluated when we put the 25 budget together. But under this plan, it does not assume any major fee increases for those memberships. We have some increases that golf has put together, and they are very minor, $1 increase in cart fees and $1 increase in range, in the range ball projection. This is to build this plan. We're going to dive into this when we get to the 25 budget in even more detail.
Sue, sorry, just to clarify,
Yes.
because I know last year we looked at individual programs.
Yes.
And the increase. We would do that again, or this would be a 5% increase
No,
across the
no.
board?
Every year, we evaluate programs.
Individually, so it wouldn't be a
Individually.
across the board 5% increase?
And that 5% doesn't represent a 5% increase in fees. That's just,
Okay.
we're projecting 5% in revenue, so that could be through participation,
In revenue.
so on. We will look at, and as we put together the annual budget, we look at each individual program area, look at the expenses, and then work to determine if any type of fee increase is needed.
Okay, so that's a 5% increase in revenue.
Correct.
Correct.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Okay, on the expense side, as Brad had mentioned, our largest expense at the district is personnel to support everything we do here. We have programmed in a 4% compensation pool, and we will continue to evaluate part-time positions. The allocation, if part-time isn't working, do we make them full-time? Can we do something different with part-time positions? That will probably continue to go on forever. But in the environment we're in, it's even more important. We have a $1 increase built into part-time wages. Just as a side note, 2025 is the max of the minimum wage increase at $15 an hour. For us, except for maybe some golf operations, everyone has been significantly over minimum wage anyway. And compression is really where we're at now, what the big costs are going to be. For our insurance, we just programmed in a 5% increase. And for our pension contribution, this is a known rate. It went up slightly from 6.16 to 6.63%. And that is basically based on smoothing of investment returns over 5 years. So we had a little glitch, and our rate went up a little bit. Commodities such as fuel, equipment, vehicles, we programmed in increases just on the expense side from 3 to 10%. That's really conservative from what we're seeing in some areas, where sometimes it's 100% more, sometimes it's 50, sometimes it's 2, but it's all over the board. But I think that's probably a pretty good average for the things that won't increase, and we're going to have some that are going to increase more. And then the one project that we have, believe it or not, is we have funds allocated to do a new strategic plan 26 through 28. So there's funds included for that. Okay, looking out to 26, a little bit more unknown, so a little bit more estimating. Property taxes, again, we assumed a 2.3% increase CPI. That number came from a couple of our experts. Tom Sawyer was the first to put that out there. I asked Anthony what he thought. He thought that was a very fair estimate for 2026, but who knows. What that would do for our taxpayers, it would be an average increase of about $17, would bring them up to $457 to the Park District on a home value of just about $480,000, assuming some growth in EAV. Our special rec levy would go from 3.05, not remain, sorry about that, to 3.3 cents. Again, and that's just based on the capital that we know we have planned, the ADA improvements for that year. And then programs for Fort Hill and golf, an increase on the revenues, 2 to 5% that we have built in for 26. So a little bit more conservative than 25. Okay, on the expense side, we again went with the 4% compensation pool for full-time staff, the $1 increase in part-time wages, and the same 5% placeholder for insurance. Pension, we just did an estimate. I think I just got an estimate from IMRF of what they thought it could be, but that could go either way at this point. The new one-time we have for 26 are funds allocated to conduct an employee survey. And we do those every maybe 3 to 5 years. To gather what's going on from our employees, really important to get that feedback. And then commodities, fuel, and all those other things. We did some minor increases, but when we're out to 26, that's really something we're going to evaluate when we get to that budget year to get very specific with that. Any questions on this? I know it's very high level on the plan itself. Okay, capital. So if we look to the next 3 years, we have a whopping $36 million in projects planned. These are projects that take care of what we have. With our large capital system, that is a lot of money to have. And the key to, and we'll talk about this with our agent who does the rating, is property taxes, again, really important to funding our capital plan. And the issuance of debt, as we've been talking about tonight, is probably the second largest funding source that we have for capital. We also have developer contributions. We have interest that's earned on these funds that rolls into the funding for capital. And also, a very important philosophy that, that this board and prior boards have set up is that if we have surpluses in any of our operations, we do better than expected. Those funds are reinvested back into the community through capital investment here. And that over time has allowed some of our balances to get where they are right now and to provide that flexibility for us. So we're fortunate we have all of those to support such a large plan. $36 million over 3 years, that's a lot of money.
So in summary, as we look at the plan, the draft plan as it's presented does keep the district in a positive financial position for the next few years based on the assumptions that have been used. We will continue to emphasize the importance of hiring and retaining qualified staff. As I mentioned before, working through the compensation study, gathering feedback from staff, certainly wanting to be competitive and being creative when it comes to the recruitment and retention strategies. The exciting project this year, the 2024 recreation space, indoor recreation space needs assessment, will help with guiding the district later in the year as we plan for the future direction of those spaces. And there'll be some decisions for us to make as a district as we get community feedback and understand that a bit further. And then really one of our goals, continuing to provide affordable recreation opportunities. Again, going back to providing programs that are affordable, facilities that are accessible to the community, and that's something that this plan, as it's presented, continues to be able to do. And then, believe it or not, as Director Stanish mentioned, late in 2025, we will be embarking on updating and creating the strategic plan for 2026 through 2028. So with that, we'd like to open it up to any questions or comments. The intent would be if there's support from the board, we would move forward with bringing the plan for approval at the June meeting.
Any questions?
Hey, Brad, very broad question, but what do you think the chances are the district or the staff would recommend pursuing some type of referendum in the next 3 years? I mean, obviously there's a lot that goes into that, but like on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 you think it would definitely happen, and 1 being like it definitely wouldn't happen, where do you think?
Not at a point to be able to provide on a scale where that's at. That's where we're at right now with engaging the community in this community survey, is gathering feedback from the residents on their interest and need for indoor space specifically, and then the willingness to pay portion of that. So I think for us as an organization, as we look ahead to indoor space, that would be something that we would likely need to go to the community and request, the financial support to be able to do that. But to put that on a range of 1 to 10 at this point, it's too early in the process, not having that full community feedback and survey completed.
But you do think if we did, it would be driven by indoor space, not anything else, or again, is that too early?
Too early. Too early. Right now, with this particular project, we are focusing on the indoor space aspect and working to try to determine how we address some of the capacity issues that we're experiencing with Fort Hill, some of the wait lists that we see within programs. And so, no, it's too early to be able to speak to that.
Fair enough.
Are there any Any other questions? No? All right. Well, thank you for putting this together. These documents are really helpful, both for us and for the residents, so I appreciate all the work that went into it.
Yeah, and kudos to all the department directors. They're heavily involved in this, as well as Sue and Jeremy spend quite a bit of time, and this proves to be a very beneficial document for the Park District, especially as we prepare to develop the next annual budget.
All right, thank you. All right. Next up, Fort Hill Activity Center exterior precast concrete panel caulking and coating.
Yes, good evening. Contract for this project is planned to be presented to the Park Board via purchase order with competitive pricing at the next meeting on June 13th. The Park District has an opportunity to contract directly with product manufacturers through cooperative purchasing networks based on competitive pricing already set for products and services. This approach will assist with expediting procurement and project implementation schedules. The scope of work for this project includes surface preparation, crack repair, caulking, and application of waterproofing coating of the exterior precast concrete panels of this facility, the Fort Hill Activity Center. As part of the routine maintenance, staff identified that the exterior precast concrete panels of Fort Hill Activity Center are ready to be caulked and recoated in order to maintain its structural integrity, its aesthetically pleasing appearance since the building was first built and opened and ready for use in 2016. Pending contract approval, the project work is slated to be completed this summer or fall. So we just want to provide an update on that project this evening.
And I'm sorry, Director Schutz, if we asked this last time, but is this something we can expect to do every 8 years?
Yeah, it really is dependent upon what our staff sees in the field when they inspect the precast panels. So if for some reason we can get more time out of it, it could go 10 years, it could go 6 years. It really depends on the weather conditions and how it holds up. But we do have placeholders. We're figuring about 8 to 10 years as a placeholder, but we identified 8 years at this point, yes.
Okay. So this was on our radar. We know it's just
Absolutely,
ongoing maintenance of maintaining what we have. Awesome.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Knock Park Ball Field number 5 renovation.
So contract for this project is anticipated to be presented to the Park Board for approval in June as well. At the February 23rd, 2023 meeting, the Park Board authorized the Executive Director to issue a purchase order to Field Turf USA Incorporated to furnish and install synthetic turf for the infield of Field 5 at DuPage River Sports Complex and Field 5 in Knock Park in partnership with Naperville Little League Baseball. In 2023, the Park District completed the DuPage River Sports Complex Field 5 renovation project and just recently hosted the ribbon cutting event, which was held on May 11th of this month. The general construction portion of the Knock Park Field 5 renovation project involves grading, concrete, curbing, subsurface drainage work, as well as new backstop and a portion of line fencing. This work is planned to be completed prior to the installation of the synthetic turf infield by Field Turf USA Incorporated. Pending contract approval, construction activities are expected to begin in June with the intent that the project reaches substantial completion by the end of the year and ready for use during the spring 2025 program season. So just like DuPage River Sports Complex Field 5, we would look to do a ribbon cutting event probably in the spring of next year.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question about that. I've watched some of the games in the new artificial turf field at the DuPage the River Park last Saturday, and kids were trying to slide on that artificial turf field. And I mentioned that before, that I question the safety of that, a kid sliding on that surface. And has that been raised at all as a concern?
Yeah, from us, I have not heard of that as a concern. This synthetic turf infield is actually utilized in college level as well as high school levels. I think even the Commissioner Janner, provided some comments on that, but I haven't heard or seen any concerns or reports to identify that when players are sliding into the bases and actually playing the game.
Okay, I think we need to watch out for that. I'm surprised that that's not a safety issue. And again, I'd like to see dirt around second and third base so we can do it. I think it's a safety issue to not have it. That's my experience playing baseball. We'll have to watch that, I think. That concerns me. So I don't know if anybody else has a concern or not, but I'd be worried about that, about kids sliding on that.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to train elite baseball athletes for the last 20 years, and the coaching point for that is just to get into their slide sooner than you normally would if you're playing on turf. You train the athlete to get into the slide sooner so they don't overslide the base and have to reach back, as opposed to dirt where you'd start your slide a little bit later. But as Director Schutz mentioned, it's absolutely industry standard across all levels of baseball now to play on turf, and it's just something the coaches need to train the athletes to do, in my own opinion.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And I did want to mention on that really quickly to thank staff for all the work on the May 11th event at DuPage Sports River Complex. Having Nikki Lopez and Southpaw there, I know it was a lot of work. The community seemed to really enjoy it, especially the kids. So thank you all. Sorry. And was that it on the?
Yes,
on the
that's
bat
it.
field? Okay.
Yes,
cool.
thank
Thanks.
you.
So next is playground renovations.
Contracts for 2024 playground renovations at Arrowhead Park, Springfield Park, and Winding Creek Park are anticipated to be presented to the Park Board for approval in June. The scope of work for the playground renovations involves removal of the existing play equipment and site furnishings, as well as installation of new play equipment, concrete flat work, site furnishings, and landscaping. Pending contract approvals, construction activities are expected to begin in the summer with the intent that the projects reach substantial completion this summer and fall.
Great. Thanks. Winding Creek Park basketball court development.
Yes, a contract for this project is planned to be presented to the Park Board for approval in June or July of this year. The scope of work for the basketball court development involves the installation of new circular asphalt court with 3 goals: concrete flat work and landscape restoration. Pending contract approval, construction activities are expected to begin this summer with the intent that project itself will reach substantial completion in summer or fall. Also this evening, we wanted to share with the board, there's a handout that we provided. Our project manager actually identified this last week, the trees that are right next to the proposed location of the new basketball court in Winding Creek Park. There's been some vandalism to them. We're further investigating this, reported to Park Police. But we just wanted you to be aware of that we identified this. We're going to work to nurse these trees back to very good health, but just want to be aware that this is something that occurred before we even got to the point of installing the basketball court. So just an FYI.
Thanks for the update.
How recent was this?
Our staff reported last week.
Oh, so these are brand new marks?
Yes.
It's unfortunate. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it? Okay. Park police vehicle purchase.
Thank you. At the June 13th Park Board meeting, staff plans on presenting the purchase of a 2025 Ford Police Interceptor for approval. The unit currently utilized by Park Police is a 2014 F-150 pickup truck and is approaching the end of its serviceable lifespan. The new 2025 Interceptor would need to be ordered and built and has an expected fulfillment date of later this fall. The purchase was listed in the 2024 Fleet Vehicle and Equipment Purchase Plan as a part of the 2024 capital budget. More details will be provided in an upcoming weekly Packlet board memo, and funds are available to make this purchase. Any questions?
No. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We'll move on to department updates. We'll start with admin.
Good evening. The 2024 National Recreation and Parks Association Conference will be held in Atlanta, Georgia, October 8th through the 10th. A preliminary schedule of education sessions have been forwarded with session descriptions available later this summer. If you are planning on attending the conference, please notify me by August 23rd so I can coordinate registrations and travel arrangements. Thank you.
Thanks. Next up is finance.
You've heard what we've been working on, so.
Just a little busy,
I'm not going to say
huh?
anything else. I'm not saying budget yet. Budget will start in July, so.
Thank you, Director Stanish. Next up is golf.
Good evening. I got a couple things from golf. First up, update on some of our projects right now. The weather's been cooperative the last couple of weeks, and we've had significant progress on the construction with the Marie Todd practice facility. The contractor is finishing up the rough shaping of all the features this week, and beginning next week, we'll be finalizing the details of the new bunkers and the practice area before we start placing the seed and sod. The design and specifications for this project include sodding of all the main features of the practice area, which will allow staff to quickly get these areas ready for opening. The expectations are once construction is completed, the new practice area features can be opened in a matter of weeks, not months, if these areas were all seeded. The contractor is still forecasting completion in June, weather permitting. And if we get closer to completion of the project, staff should have a better understanding of when the grand opening ribbon cutting could be scheduled. We're shooting for sometime in the middle of the summer. And based off that, we'll work on our schedule and start planning that event. And I know I talked to Marie on Tuesday at the ribbon cutting then, and she's excited and looking forward to that day. Over at Naperville also, the irrigation pond recharge well has been completely removed, and it's ready for inspections and repairs after the unexpected failure last month. All the components have been shipped to the contractor's facility for complete disassembly and inspection. That process is expected to take about several weeks. So in the meantime, the contractor has begun work on installing a temporary pump at Naperbrook to make sure the golf course has irrigation water available. The past 2 weeks have started to slowly erode our water supply at the course, even with staff doing everything we can to limit water use. Our sprinkler use has been reduced. Our mowing schedule is altered, and several areas are only being hand watered right now to make sure we can manage with what water we have available. It's actually been very impressive how conditions at the golf course still are in very excellent shape, even despite the limits on irrigation water the past couple of weeks. So really kudos to the staff over there. They're doing a great job during this little crisis. The contractor is expecting the temporary well to be available as soon as this weekend or possibly early next week, and then once we get that back online, we can expect it to return to some more normal turf management practices. On the golf course side, the courses are preparing for the Memorial Day weekend, which is always a real busy 4 days of golf. If the weather is decent, we can expect over 500 players a day between the two courses, Friday through Monday, each day. Staff is ready for the weekend as nearly all our part-time positions at both courses have been filled, which is great. We're in really good shape right now. We did have a full-time assistant superintendent position become available in the golf maintenance department when one of the employees there resigned last month to relocate, but the response for the job posting has been positive. We've had some excellent candidates scheduled for interviews, and we hope to have that position filled very soon. And finally, the weather in early May slowed some of our rounds due to the frequent rain events, but rounds have obviously picked up the last 2 weeks when things have kind of dried out. Our May rounds and revenues are tracking right on budget right now, and we expect to finish the month somewhere close to budget for our rounds, which will help continue our really strong start to the 2024 season. Any questions?
A quick question on the well. To be honest, the fact that I don't want to pull it from the consent agenda, but the fact that we've got to pay $53,000 for this is really maddening. I mean, if I buy a car, brand new car, and the car's not working, and I need to get a loaner, the dealer would cover that. I wouldn't be paying out of pocket for that. And I know it's not on you, but Dirk, I mean, like warranty on this kind of stuff. I mean, again, it's maddening that we got to pay out of pocket for this when it's, in my opinion, some of this should probably be on the contractor. So I just want to see like your analysis of the warranty and why this is coming on us.
Well, we don't know what failed yet. We have theories about what failed. So once we know what failed and what the proximate cause is, all of that's on the table. One of the issues is that if Paderma picks it up, they have a right of subrogation to pursue that and get all that. But at the moment, the key is to be able to move forward and keep the course watered. We're fronting the money without waiving our right to go and chase it down and pursue it. To win any sort of legal claim, we have to be able to explain the proximate cause and the failure, and we don't have that evidence yet.
Is there an expectation that we're going to get to a sub-row position at some point so we could recoup the money or at least part of it?
Well, Paderma hasn't firmly told us that they're covering it, I don't think yet. So,
No.
So sub-row only kicks in if Paderma pays, and we're out our $1,000 deductible, I think, if that's what it is. And but otherwise, once we have cause, then we'll be pursuing it. So,
I'm going to kind of piggyback on that too. I've been talking with both Paderma and Travelers, who's their subsidiary on this. They have right now 2 consultants and experts in the fields of machinery fails looking at this with the consultant or with the contractor. And between those, they'll be able to hopefully determine where the cause and why and how the failure occurred. And then from there, we'll actually, hopefully pursue this.
And can you remind us, off the top of your head, what we paid for this originally before the repair?
For the original contract?
Right.
It was just about $200,000.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I have a question about the replacement. You said they're hoping to get the temporary well up by this weekend?
Correct.
If something happens with that, does continuing to play on the course risk damage if we're doing?
We have other options that we're looking at right now. We've been working with our Parks Department. We do have some large pumps that we can start moving water from some of our other ponds on the golf course to start recharging the irrigation pond. If the situation does not, repair itself, or they aren't able to repair that well or get the temporary well going, then we'll start falling back on some of those options.
Okay, but for now, we're not doing any damage by?
No.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank
you. Next up is Human Resources.
Good evening. So last week we kicked off 2 large projects. Director Wilson took some of my thunder earlier, but on last Thursday, Executive Director Wilson, HR Administrator Zuniga, and I had a call with the Compensation Director at HR Source, and that call thereby kicked off our compensation program analysis project. We look forward to receiving the final report and recommendations in mid-September, which we understand it's going to be close to that budget time frame, but we will be having conversations throughout the project and should have a really good sense as we're building the budget if we need to include anything as far as adjustments for some of our current staff. Secondly, the transition to a new human capital management software is underway. Last Friday, Director Stanish and I had a call with the iSolve Senior Project Manager assigned to our implementation. The entire implementation team will convene on June 5th. The largest implementation milestone will be a parallel payroll, and this is a test run that we'll do in early September. So we'll run it in our current system and then run it in the new platform, and it will help us determine whether or not there's any issues that we need to address prior to implementation. There will be some implementation that will occur later in the year. Largely our performance management system module will be later in the year. Kind of want to get people paid and make sure that's all taken care of, and we'll implement other modules later. So September is going to be busy for us. But the HR team is extremely excited by these projects and the impact on employee recruitment and retention. So I really want to take this opportunity to thank you all as commissioners for supporting us and providing us the resources to implement these new tools. And that's all I had this evening.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next up is IT.
Just a very quick IT. They have been busy getting our operation, but that was it.
And we should be using the right phishing button for the emails.
Yes.
I don't know who did that wrong. Next up is Marketing and Communications.
Good evening, Commissioners. Time for a little show and tell, because it's been a while. So I put 3 different cards at each of your places, and I want to walk you through some of the things that we've been working on. So the first one is a summer events card, which this is a little bit of a redesign from what we've had before. We've had our seasonal events cards for a couple of years now. This is a redesign that focuses more on each of the events. It's a little bit more of an efficient process now for us to produce that, so I hope you enjoy that. Secondly, we have this Explore card, if you see that. And this was created for an event that we attended at District 204, and it was for new residents who predominantly speak other languages. So they supplied us with some of the languages that these individuals speak, and we put together this card. Now, this is a new version of the card that combines some of the top languages that's spoken through in District 204 and also District 203. So we think this is a great opportunity to have this information out there in our facilities, also at various fairs and events that we attend. As you know, late last year, we did roll out on our website the Google Translate widget. So this is just a nice way of letting people know that that's available to them and they can learn all about the Naperville Park District. Number 3 is the Fee Assistance Panel Card. And we put this together. It's As you know, we've talked about the fee assistance program, and there's been the focus on, trying to get people to donate to it, to support it, but then there's the other side where there's a lot of people in the community that need financial help, and we can provide that through the fee assistance program. So this particular card talks about what the fee assistance program does, its benefits, and how to apply. So this is another opportunity for us to do outreach, to be more inclusive in what we're offering to the community and letting people know what's all the resources that are available to them. So that again will be in our facilities, and also a traveling piece that can go to the different events that we attend. All right, and then lastly, just a reminder, I know I brought this up last month, but as Executive Director Wilson was talking about all the outreach that we're doing this year and the feedback gathering and the surveys, we do have that 5-question survey that we're having at our various events, and we will take a look at that over the summer and the fall, and take a look at, kind of compile everything together and just see how we're doing as a district and where we can improve, and yeah. All good things.
These look beautiful.
Thank you.
I have a question particularly about the fee assistance program flyer. I know you said it's at our facilities. Do we proactively put this in any other facilities?
They're with our facilities. I believe we've done some in the past with the library, correct me if I'm wrong. But we also work very closely with the schools and wanting to get this out to the school administration so that they can also share it with their families.
And the schools are really going to be the main focus of that beyond our facilities. The library, they have limited availability for space, kind of like we do in our facilities. So, but the schools really seem like a great conduit for putting that information out there.
I wonder if also maybe the townships, I know that's a main point of services for a lot of people.
Andrea and I are working through, we put it together. It's something, a conversation we've had for a while. We put it together, and then she and I are just talking about the different ways that we can kind of put it out through the community and spread the word.
Great.
Sam, I know the schools used to have you could put stuff in backpacks, but now I think it's all digital.
It's all digital.
Is there a way to get this,
Absolutely.
to someone else's point,
Yep.
I can't remember who made the point about schools, but get this in the digital version?
Yes. Yep, we can do that.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
Park Police? Anything? No?
I don't have
No
Steve's.
report?
No, just mine.
All right, go ahead.
Hello again. In a previous update, I had shared that there's been a multi-department effort to investigate potential alternatives to our current work order management system. In addition to custodial, golf, parks, and trades, we've also pulled in the IT and planning departments in the recent conversations. As a next step, we are working on preparing a request for proposal to seek information and pricing from potential vendors to compare against our current provider. We will be using the RFP that Directors Seppi and Stanish had recently put together for their human capital management system as a template, and aim to have that published by the end of June for vendors to review. Throughout the year, our fleet team is constantly price checking and updating our purchase plans. As we're looking to work through the remainder of our 2024 purchases and begin to build on our 2025 plan, I thought I'd share a little bit about what we're seeing with pricing. On the positive side, Director Carlson had previously mentioned that vehicle and equipment availability does seem to be much improved as compared to the previous few years. However, we are still seeing prices continue to creep up annually, despite the return of contract pricing via the purchasing networks. I might have shared earlier, Ford Maverick, we paid about $20,600 for in 2022. Just cost $28,000 in 2024. Snow broom we bought a couple of years ago was just under $35,000, and now it's about $41,000. And we're looking to purchase another ball field rake for just in 2021 it was about $15,500, and now it's over $20,000. So on the equipment side, it seems that we're seeing a price creep of about 5 to 25% annually. The vehicles have been a little bit harder to track as the last few years. We had a lot of flexibility, thank you to the board, in procuring the vehicles, and we were paying market pricing. As we return to contract pricing, it's a little bit harder to compare at this point, but we have seen numbers jump anywhere from about 10 to 30% annually. So we'll continue to do our best to work within our budgets, and typically we're seeking cheaper alternatives or attempting to extend out life cycles, and it's just a work in progress. And then I thought I'd talk a little bit about the hot topic of the moment, cicadas. Just this week, we've really started to see them emerge in the area, with some areas seeing very high concentrations, and others seeing next to none. As many are aware, tree damage can occur as a result of their egg-laying process, though this mostly affects young trees with a trunk diameter of less than 2 inches. Fortunately, our standard practice has been to order trees with a minimum of a 2-inch diameter across the trunk, so most of our newer trees are able to withstand the cicada egg-laying process. For those who were around during the last hatching, we did not experience a whole lot of damage that required our trees to be replanted. Staff did work with a few residents who requested and donated netting over a few remembrance trees. However, our arborists did not feel that there was a need to proactively net all of our younger trees. Cicadas live about 3 to 4 weeks above ground, so we'll have a pretty good idea of their effects, or the effects of their emergence within the next 6 to 8 weeks. And that's all I had.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, next up, planning and development.
Yes, I have one item for the board this evening. Last night, we hosted a public open house at Nike Sports Complex for the kickoff of the site master plan. We were really excited to see about 15 residents and their families who provided input on recreational amenities. We plan to have a follow-up open house on Tuesday, June 18th. And then what we intend to do is develop a site master plan to share with the board, along with a resolution to start the process of submitting the OSAG grant, which we plan to do late this summer, early fall. So just want to provide you with an update on that initiative.
Great, I appreciate all the work in the open house and all the staff that was there for that. I know when we did the Ron Ori garden plots, we followed a similar thing, and it's really nice to get the community support behind it in the beginning, so thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right, great. And finally, we have recreation.
Good evening. Centennial Beach is set to open this weekend. We are in the final phase of lifeguard training and close to meeting our goal of 55 lifeguards, so we're in a really good place. Beach preseason pass sales are running slightly lower than last year at the same time, but memberships are discounted through Memorial Day, so we anticipate that we'll catch up by the end of the weekend. Day camp preparations are also in the final phase. To date, we have received over 3,000 registrations for the Frontier and Cedar Park locations. This is 22% increase over last summer. By adjusting schedules and hiring additional staff, we were able to expand the program to add additional participants off the wait list this year. So it's been really good. Staff are getting ready to kick off the summer season, with many of the programs beginning the first few weeks in June, and all of our 523 garden plots have been sold. And lastly, our staff are preparing for the annual Kite Fly event that takes place on June 2nd from 12 to 4 p.m. down at Frontier Sports Complex. Professional kite flyers will be on hand to feature their large, spectacular kites. Families are welcome to come and fly their own kites or have the option to purchase one. And a new addition this year to our event is the Neuqua Valley High School Steel Bands, who will be performing. And Kids Matter will also be hosting their return of their popular games from around the world. So, lots going on. Any questions?
I did, and I'm not sure if you're the right person to answer this. For the garden plots, when you mentioned it, did we do the no-till this season?
No. No, go ahead.
No, we did not start that this season. I believe that is planned for 2025.
Yes, we will, however, we're starting the process to let people know this summer, because once they choose next year, because we'll have to make some adjustments with where plots are located. So there's a lot of planning that goes into this, so that we're preparing them ahead of time.
I knew it was going to be a big deal. That's why I asked to see how it went. But
it is, and they've been prepped, and we'll do some more communication this summer. And then by the end of the summer, we really have to know if they want to do that next year. I mean, they're going to have to commit. Sure. So that will be a big deal when that happens.
Thanks for that update.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. All right, on to the semi-annual review of executive session minutes.
Move to approve Resolution 24-05, finding that cause exists to maintain the written and oral approved executive session minutes of Schedule A as confidential and not be released.
Second. Roll call, please.
Vice President Ruffing?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Ansier?
Yes.
Commissioner Jacks?
Yes.
Commissioner Janner?
Yes.
Commissioner Risvold?
Yes.
President Gibson?
Yes. All right, the next regular meeting of the Park Board of Commissioners is June 13th, 2024 at 7 p.m. We do have executive session this evening.
Move to adjourn to executive session to discuss personnel per Section 2C1 of the Open Meetings Act.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Vice President Ruffing?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Ansier?
Yes.
Commissioner Jacks?
Yes.
Commissioner Janner?
Yes.
Commissioner Risvold?
Yes.
President Gibson?
Yes. All right. Thank you, everyone.